What if I told you that everything you think you know about Meghan Markle is about to be turned on its head? The woman who is now a global humanitarian, a duchess, and a symbol of modern royalty. Could she actually be hiding a dark past? A past that involves not only the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, but also dangerous connections, shady characters, and decisions so controversial that they could break her carefully crafted image? This isn't just another royal rumor. This is the untold story of Meghan Markle's life before the palace, a life full of secrets, betrayal, and choices that she's desperate to keep buried. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It's easy to forget that Meghan Markle was once just an unknown actress, struggling to make a name for herself in the crowded Hollywood scene. The public image of Meghan, the glamorous Duchess of Sussex, is one that most people see as her true self. But what if it's all an act? What if the woman who became Harry's wife, who campaigned for women's rights, and who charmed her way into the hearts of millions, was hiding something much darker? What if she wasn't the woman she wanted us to believe she was? Enter Trevor Engelson, Meghan's first husband. He's a man who has stayed largely in the shadows since their split, but he knows secrets about Meghan's past that could destroy everything we think we know about her. It's not just about their brief marriage. It's about what he saw, what he learned, and what he had to keep quiet for all these years. And now, for the first time, he's speaking out, revealing things that Meghan never wanted anyone to know. And trust me, these revelations are not the kind of things you'll find in her carefully crafted autobiography or her public speeches. No, these are the real secrets, the ones that Meghan has fought to keep hidden. This story isn't just about a woman who married a prince. It's about a woman who, in her late 20s, was tangled up with dangerous people, making decisions that would change the course of her life forever. It's about how a woman who rose to fame with the world watching her may have been running from a much darker side of herself and trying to outrun the truth for years. So why should you care about this now? Why should the world care about a past that Meghan would rather keep buried? The truth is, this story is more than just juicy gossip. It's about understanding who Meghan Markle really is and why she has made the choices she has. It's about peeling back the layers of her image and seeing the person underneath, the one who may have used her charm, her intelligence, and her looks to manipulate the system and protect herself from the truth. Meghan's story isn't just her own. It's a story of power, privilege, and the lengths people go to protect their reputation. And it's a story that matters because, as we all know, the royal family isn't just about the people in the palace. It's about the public's perception, the way the media shapes narratives, and how those narratives shape the future. And Meghan Markle? She's been in the center of it all. But what if everything she's shown us is a lie? What if she spent years covering up her past with a carefully constructed image, and now it's all about to come crashing down? What would you think of Meghan if you knew about her dangerous liaisons, her ties to powerful figures, and her desperate attempts to keep the truth from coming out? And what if those lies weren't just about protecting her image, but about protecting herself from much more dangerous forces? But here's the thing, we're only scratching the surface. You see, the revelations Trevor Engelson has about Meghan's past aren't just about the type of people she associated with. No, they go much deeper. They involve decisions Meghan made that could shatter everything. Everything about her marriage to Harry, her life as a royal, and the image she spent years cultivating. The truth about Meghan Markle's past is far darker than anyone could have imagined. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. How much do you really know about Meghan Markle before she ever stepped foot into the royal spotlight? We all know the story, the struggling actress, the Suits star, the humanitarian. But that's just the surface. What if I told you there was another side to Meghan? A side she's been desperately hiding, and it's more than just her Hollywood career. Before Meghan was a global household name, she was just another actress trying to break into Hollywood. Her role on Suits was a breakthrough. But before that, she was auditioning, struggling, and living paycheck to paycheck. The world didn't know her name, and she didn't have the luxury of relying on a royal title or a massive social media following. She was just another hopeful actress, trying to carve out a place for herself in an industry that could chew people up and spit them out. But what many people don't know is that Meghan's early Hollywood life wasn't just filled with auditions and the occasional acting gig. There were darker, more dangerous elements involved. And they started with the men she was surrounded by. Men who weren't just Hollywood producers or directors, but men with ties to far more powerful and sinister worlds. This is where the story takes a turn. It's one thing to be an actress working hard for your big break. It's another thing to be tangled up with men who had connections to the criminal underworld, to shady figures who could either make or break your career with a single phone call. And that's exactly what Meghan was dealing with. By the time Meghan was in her late 20s, she wasn't just attending high-profile parties or rubbing elbows with actors. She was becoming involved with men who had far more dangerous connections. There were whispers, rumors, and signs that she was mixing in circles that didn't just deal with fame and fortune, but with power, corruption, and control. It's important to understand this. These weren't the types of relationships one could simply walk away from. When you're tangled up with powerful figures, they don't just disappear when you're done with them. You either stay in their good graces or you risk everything. The line between business and personal becomes blurred. And for Meghan, this meant a set of choices that would follow her for years. The relationships Meghan had in her late 20s were not the innocent kind. They were the kind that come with hidden strings attached. And these weren't just any men. These were powerful figures, some with rumored ties to the criminal underworld, some with connections that could destroy careers with a single whisper. But what were they really after? And why did Meghan continue to engage with them? Was it about power? Was it about survival? Or was it something else entirely? But there's more to this story. These dangerous liaisons didn't just affect Meghan's relationships with powerful men. They also impacted her choices. Meghan, in her early years, made decisions that were much more than calculated career moves. She made choices that reflected a deep fear, a fear of the truth getting out. What do I mean by this? Well, it turns out that some of Meghan's relationships were not just about getting ahead in Hollywood. They were about survival. Meghan found herself in a situation where she had to make decisions that many people would never be forced to face. Her relationships with these men weren't just about glamour or luxury. They were about navigating a world of power and control. And it was in this world that she made some decisions that she would later regret. For Meghan, her late 20s were filled with secrets that she's never fully acknowledged. And these secrets, these decisions, were tied to something even darker: the fear of exposure. What would happen if the truth about these relationships, about the dangerous figures she had been involved with, ever came to light? Now, let's dive into something that's both shocking and deeply personal. Meghan Markle, like many women, has faced difficult decisions in her life. But there's one part of her past that she's never wanted anyone to know about: the abortions she had during her late 20s. These weren't just any abortions. They were decisions made under extreme pressure, influenced by the dangerous men she was involved with at the time. Meghan's life wasn't just full of romantic entanglements or fleeting Hollywood crushes. No, some of her relationships were far more dangerous. These were men who had power, control, and who weren't afraid to use it. And it was with these men that Meghan made choices that many would find hard to understand. Choices that she kept hidden for years. These weren't simple, private decisions. These were life-changing moments. Moments that would shape her future, her identity, and how she would present herself to the world. Why would Meghan make such choices? Why would a woman with so much ambition, so much potential, risk it all in such a way? Was it about escaping the pressure? Was it about escaping the men who controlled her life? Or was it something darker? It's easy to think of Meghan Markle as the perfect princess, a woman who has it all: the looks, the wealth, the social standing. But behind the scenes, Meghan was struggling with her own personal demons. And one of the biggest secrets she's kept hidden for years is her complicated, painful past. The abortions she had weren't just medical procedures. They were decisions that reflected a larger fear: the fear of exposure, the fear of losing everything. Meghan's decision to keep these secrets buried isn't just about protecting her reputation. It's about protecting herself from the reality of her past. The woman we know today isn't the woman she was in her late 20s. She's a woman who's spent years building an image that hides the truth. And that truth? It's one that could tear down everything she's built. But here's where it gets even more complicated. You see, Meghan wasn't just hiding these secrets to protect her image. There was something else going on, something much deeper. And it wasn't just about the men she was involved with. It was about the choices she made to escape the life she was trapped in, choices that would haunt her for years. What if these decisions, these painful, personal moments, were just the beginning of something much darker. What if the real reason Meghan kept these secrets was because they were part of a bigger plan, a plan that would eventually lead her straight into the arms of the royal family? Stay tuned, because what happened next in Meghan's life would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Before Meghan Markle became a duchess, before she was thrust into the spotlight of the royal family, there was one man who knew her intimately: Trevor Engelson. But what really went down in their marriage, and why did it end? What secrets does Trevor know that could turn everything we think we know about Meghan upside down? And what's he been holding back all these years? We all know the fairy tale version of Meghan's love life: the whirlwind romance with Prince Harry, the stunning wedding, and the world's obsession with the couple's every move. But before all that, there was another man, Trevor Engelson. He wasn't the first to be associated with Meghan, but he was the one who would see a side of her that the world would never know. He was there before the public image, before the titles, and before the carefully curated brand. Meghan and Trevor met in the early 2000s. At the time, she was struggling to make it as an actress, and he was a producer, just beginning to make his own mark in Hollywood. They were young, both eager to take on the world. Their relationship seemed innocent enough at first, a couple finding their way in an industry that often felt like a game of survival. But what most people don't realize is that their relationship wasn't as picture-perfect as it seemed. Meghan's public persona as a sweet, down-to-earth girl next door wasn't exactly what Trevor was experiencing behind closed doors. There were moments of tension, unspoken truths, and a growing divide that neither of them could ignore. Trevor, for his part, was already well aware of Meghan's ambition. She had dreams, big dreams, and she was doing everything she could to achieve them. But Trevor would also soon learn that Meghan wasn't the only one with aspirations. There were darker forces at play, too, pulling the strings of their relationship. In 2011, Meghan and Trevor got married. At the time, they looked like the perfect Hollywood couple. She was an up-and-coming actress, and he was a well-connected producer in the film industry. But beneath the glitz and glamour of their public marriage, things were starting to unravel. Meghan, still not the household name she would later become, was feeling the pressure of the Hollywood machine. She wanted more than just minor roles on TV. She wanted the big break, the fame, and the recognition. And in pursuit of that, she began to shift, emotionally, mentally, and even morally. Trevor, on the other hand, wasn't immune to the pressures of Hollywood either. He had a career to nurture, connections to make, and a place to secure for himself in an industry that could turn its back on you in an instant. The demands of the industry were intense, and the strain began to show. Their marriage, once full of promise, started to crack. It wasn't just the pressures of work. Meghan had begun to distance herself, to focus solely on advancing her career. She had dreams that didn't include just being Trevor's wife. She had dreams of being more, of being someone who wasn't just a Hollywood actress, but a global name. And as the years went on, those dreams clashed with her reality. In 2013, after just 2 years of marriage, Meghan and Trevor split. The official story was that they simply grew apart, an all-too-common tale in the high-pressure world of Hollywood. But that's just the surface. The truth, as Trevor would later reveal, is much darker, filled with emotional manipulation, secrets, and a marriage that was falling apart at the seams. You see, their divorce wasn't just about a typical Hollywood breakup. There were bigger forces at play. Meghan, in her late 20s, had begun to realize that her life and career were at a crossroads. She was no longer just a struggling actress. She had potential. But that potential required sacrifices. And Trevor? He wasn't part of the life she saw for herself anymore. It wasn't just that their personalities clashed or that they had grown apart. No, it was deeper than that. Trevor was witness to the reality of Meghan's double life, the side of her that wasn't just focused on building her career, but on forging relationships with powerful figures who could open doors for her. These were people who weren't just in the entertainment industry. These were figures who moved in darker, more dangerous circles, and they were the ones Meghan had started to court. For Trevor, this was a shocking revelation. The woman he had married, the woman who had once seemed so genuine, was becoming someone else, someone he didn't fully recognize anymore. And for him, it wasn't just about the betrayal of their marriage. It was the realization that Meghan had changed, and not for the better. What Trevor knows, and what he's kept hidden for years, goes beyond just the collapse of their marriage. It's about the woman Meghan became, the choices she made, and the people she chose to associate with. Trevor saw firsthand how Meghan's ambition began to consume her, how she shifted from a young woman with a dream to a woman willing to make any deal necessary to reach the top. As Meghan began to climb the ranks of Hollywood, she encountered men who weren't just about getting her a role. These were men with power, influence, and connections to circles that were far darker than the average Hollywood producer or director. These were men who knew how to control people, how to manipulate them for their own gain. And it was with these men that Meghan began to make decisions that would change the course of her life. Trevor was aware of these relationships. He saw the men Meghan was becoming involved with, the types of deals she was making, and the way she was willing to use her beauty and charm to get ahead. But it wasn't just about her career. It was about something deeper, something more dangerous. And Trevor knew it. He saw the transformation in her. He saw the woman who had once been full of dreams of love and family turn into someone who was willing to do anything to secure her future. But why did Trevor stay quiet for so long? Why didn't he speak out when he knew the truth? Was it loyalty? Fear? Or was it something more? Here's where things get truly shocking. While Meghan may have moved on from her marriage to Trevor, the truth is that their relationship didn't just end when they signed the divorce papers. The aftermath of their split revealed something much deeper. Trevor knew things about Meghan's past that could destroy everything she's worked for. He knew about the connections to dangerous figures, the decisions that Meghan had made in the pursuit of fame, and the dark side of her ambition. But what did Trevor know, and why did he wait until now to reveal it? What secrets has he kept for all these years, and why is he finally ready to speak? Stay tuned. The truth is about to come out. What if I told you that Meghan Markle's rise to fame wasn't just about hard work and ambition? What if I told you it was about the powerful men she used, the dangerous liaisons she formed, and the secrets she kept hidden from the public eye? What if these men weren't just Hollywood moguls, but people with connections to the criminal underworld? Meghan Markle was no stranger to powerful men. It's no secret that in Hollywood, connections are everything. But what many people don't know is the type of men she was associating with, especially in her late 20s, when she was desperately trying to break through in the entertainment industry. These weren't the average Hollywood producers or directors. No, Meghan was moving in circles that few even knew existed. She was rubbing elbows with men who had more power than just a few contacts in the film industry. These were men with wealth, influence, and ties to areas of life that Meghan would later regret getting involved with. It's easy to assume that the world of show business is just about auditions, headshots, and casting calls. But for Meghan, it was much more than that. Her relationships with powerful men were no longer just a means to an end. They became a dangerous game of power and control. A game that she may have underestimated at the time. These weren't the kind of relationships that fade away with time. They were deeply entangled, and in many ways, Meghan was at the mercy of the people she had chosen to align herself with. She was working her way up the Hollywood ladder, but every step was a compromise. And the further she climbed, the deeper into dangerous territory she ventured. Now, let's talk about something truly disturbing. Could Meghan have been involved with people whose connections weren't just with Hollywood? What if some of the men she was linked to had ties to the mafia? The idea might seem far-fetched to some, but the truth is far more complicated than we realize. There have been whispers in the darker corners of Hollywood about Meghan's ties to men with criminal connections. These were men who didn't just have influence in entertainment. They had influence in areas that were much more murky. These were the types of figures who had a reputation for doing whatever it took to get what they wanted. And Meghan? Well, she was climbing the ranks of Hollywood, navigating a world of power and corruption. But who was she really relying on to help her get there? Many of these powerful men had their fingers in multiple pies: real estate deals, shadowy business ventures, and other enterprises that operated just outside the law. While Meghan might have been doing her best to make it as an actress, she was also making deals with these figures, using their connections to get what she wanted. But why would Meghan, a woman with so much potential, get involved with these kinds of people? Was she naive? Or was it a calculated decision, one that would pay off in the long run? Whatever the reason, Meghan's associations with these men weren't just about career advancement. They were about power. They were about control. We know Meghan as a woman who has championed women's rights, advocated for social justice, and built a brand around empowering others. But what if I told you that the ambition she displayed wasn't always as pure as it seemed? Meghan had big dreams. She wanted more than just a few TV roles. She wanted the fame, the power, the status that came with being a celebrity. And as anyone who's tried to make it in Hollywood knows, sometimes you need more than just talent to get ahead. You need connections. You need people who can open doors for you, people who can help you climb to the top. But there's a price for everything, and Meghan's relationships with these powerful men came at a heavy cost. These men weren't just stepping stones in her career. They were the ones who could make or break her. And the cost of getting their help? Well, that's something Meghan has kept hidden for years. Behind the closed doors of Hollywood's elite, Meghan made deals that most people would never even dream of. Deals that would ensure her place in the spotlight, but would also entangle her with figures that were far more dangerous than the public could ever imagine. And what happened when these deals started to fall apart? What happens when the men she relied on turn against her? As Meghan's star began to rise, so did the complexity of her relationships. She wasn't just mingling with the ordinary players in Hollywood anymore. She was meeting men who had far more to offer than just movie roles or connections. These were men who had control, men who had secrets, and men who weren't afraid to use those secrets to get what they wanted. One of the most shocking revelations about Meghan's early relationships is the fact that she wasn't just linked to men in the entertainment industry. She was linked to men who had far more dangerous ties, ties that extended into the criminal underworld. There are rumors, unconfirmed but deeply disturbing, about her involvement with men who were known to have connections to organized crime. Imagine this: Meghan, a young woman trying to make it big, caught between the glitzy world of Hollywood and the darker, more dangerous world of people who knew how to manipulate, control, and use others to get what they wanted. This wasn't just about a few bad dates or a questionable past. This was about a life that Meghan was trying desperately to keep hidden, a life that didn't fit with the image she wanted the world to see. The truth is, Meghan had to make choices. She had to decide who she could trust and who she could use. And the people she surrounded herself with? They weren't always the kind of people who had her best interests at heart. They were the type of people who would do anything to control her, and they did. But here's the thing: Meghan wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. No, she was playing the game, too. And the choices she made weren't just about survival. They were about ambition, about getting ahead, about using the power of these dangerous men to climb the Hollywood ladder. What's even more shocking? The deeper Meghan got into this world, the more she started to use her connections with these figures to build the life she always wanted, a life that would eventually lead her into the arms of a prince. But was it all part of a carefully constructed plan? Was Meghan's rise to royalty just another step in her long game to get the power, fame, and control she so desperately craved? We're about to find out. Stay tuned for what comes next, because the truth about Meghan Markle's journey to the top is far darker than we could have ever imagined. Meghan Markle's life has been painted as one of ambition, transformation, and empowerment. But there's a secret part of her story, a painful, personal chapter, that she's never wanted anyone to see. What if I told you that Meghan's rise to fame and royalty wasn't just about career choices, but about hidden, difficult decisions, decisions that could change everything we think we know about her? The first decision, a hidden struggle. In the whirlwind of Meghan Markle's early 20s, she was far from the polished duchess we see today. Her life was filled with uncertainty, frustration, and the desperate drive to make it in an unforgiving world. She was an aspiring actress trying to break into an industry that chewed up talent and spit it out, a woman trying to reconcile her personal ambitions with the realities of a competitive and often shallow entertainment world. But beneath the glossy surface of her Hollywood career, Meghan was faced with some very difficult, life-altering decisions. One of those decisions would haunt her for years: the decision to have an abortion. At the time, Meghan was in her late 20s, trying to make her mark in Hollywood while navigating complicated, sometimes dangerous relationships. She found herself pregnant, caught between the pressures of her career and the intense demands of her personal life. Meghan wasn't the first woman to be faced with such a choice, but her situation was more complicated than most. Hollywood had a way of shaping women, forcing them to make decisions that weren't always about their personal desires. For Meghan, the pressure was even greater. She had a future to secure, a career to build, and she knew that becoming a mother at that point might derail everything she had worked so hard for. The decision to terminate the pregnancy wasn't one made lightly. It was one made out of fear. Fear of losing control, of losing everything she had worked for, of her career slipping away. But this wasn't just a one-time event. This was only the beginning of a pattern that Meghan would continue to hide from the world, from her fans, and from the very public that now adores her. The emotional toll of the decisions. Abortion is never an easy decision. It's a deeply personal choice, often filled with complicated emotions, especially when made in the face of immense pressure. For Meghan, the emotional toll was even greater. She had already faced the judgment of the public, the scrutiny of Hollywood, and the doubts of those around her. But this decision, this secret, was something that Meghan carried alone, something that no one could truly understand. As time went on, this experience would shape the woman Meghan became. She had to bury the feelings of guilt, the emotional scars that came with the decision, and the fear that the public would one day discover what she had done. Meghan wasn't just hiding her past to protect her career. She was hiding it to protect herself from the judgment of the world. The woman we see today, confident and poised, wasn't always that way. Behind closed doors, she was struggling with demons that many of us will never know. The decision to hide the truth about her abortions wasn't just about protecting her image. It was about surviving in an industry that thrives on perfection, an industry that judges women more harshly than any other. Meghan knew that if the truth came out, it could destroy her career, her public persona, and the image she had carefully crafted over the years. And so, she kept the secret. She buried it deep, knowing that no one could ever truly understand the complexity of her decision. The second abortion, a repeated pattern. By the time Meghan was in her early 30s, she had already experienced the pain of an abortion once. She had made the difficult decision to terminate the pregnancy to preserve her career, but it didn't end there. The pressure to succeed, to rise above the obstacles in her life, continued to mount. And with that pressure came another painful decision, another abortion. This time, the circumstances were even more complicated. Meghan's relationship with her first husband, Trevor Engelson, had begun to fall apart. The emotional strain of their marriage was too much to bear, and the pressures of Hollywood were reaching a boiling point. Meghan wasn't just a young actress anymore. She was a woman who had already been married, who had already made difficult decisions about her future. And now, with the specter of another unplanned pregnancy looming, Meghan found herself in a position she knew all too well, faced with a choice that could determine the course of her life once again. It's not hard to imagine the weight of that decision. Meghan had a life to build, a career to secure. She was no longer just a struggling actress. She was someone on the verge of breaking into something bigger. And the reality was this: another child would change everything. It would change her plans, her future, and perhaps most importantly, her ability to stay in control of her destiny. But this time, the decision wasn't just about her career. It was about her own survival, both emotionally and professionally. And so, Meghan chose once again to end the pregnancy. It was a decision that would follow her for years, a decision that would never truly go away. And yet, it remained a secret, one that no one would ever know, at least not until now. The pattern of concealing the truth. What's most disturbing about these decisions is not just the abortions themselves, but the pattern that they reveal. Meghan didn't make these decisions in isolation. She made them because she felt trapped, because she believed that her future depended on it. In many ways, these decisions reflect the constant juggling act that Meghan faced in her early years, balancing her personal life, her career, and her relationships with powerful men who could make or break her. But Meghan wasn't the only one involved in these decisions. These were not just personal choices. They were decisions made in the context of her relationships with powerful figures, men who had influence and control over her future. Some of these men, sources claim, were not just Hollywood moguls, but figures with connections that went far beyond the entertainment industry, figures who had the power to shape Meghan's destiny, for better or worse. The secrecy surrounding these choices was also part of a larger narrative, one that Meghan had to control. She had to control the narrative of her life, or else she risked losing everything she had worked for. And so, she buried the truth. She kept it hidden, not just from the public, but from the people closest to her. This wasn't just about hiding her abortion history. It was about hiding the truth of who she was becoming. A woman who was willing to do anything to secure her future, even if it meant making difficult, painful choices that would haunt her forever. But here's the real twist. These two abortions weren't the end of the story. No, the truth is even more disturbing than we can imagine. Meghan wasn't just hiding the pain of these decisions. She was hiding something much darker, something that would affect the way the world viewed her, the way her public image would be forever changed. What was she hiding, and why did she go to such extreme lengths to cover it up? Was it just about protecting her career, or was there something far more sinister at play? The next chapter is where the real bombshell drops. Stay tuned, because the truth is about to come out, and it's far worse than anyone could have predicted. What if Meghan Markle's life in Hollywood wasn't just about auditions, networking, and fame? What if the men she associated with weren't just producers or directors, but men with connections so dangerous that a single misstep could have destroyed her forever? Could Meghan have been linked to the mafia? And if so, how deep does this connection go? The dangerous circles Meghan entered. By the time Meghan Markle was in her late 20s, she wasn't just rubbing elbows with Hollywood elites. She was entering circles that had far-reaching influence and far-reaching danger. These were men who had wealth, power, and influence, but who also had ties to criminal enterprises. Some rumors even suggest that Meghan's social life intersected with men who had direct connections to organized crime. Imagine this. Parties in Hollywood mansions, cameras flashing, laughter filling the rooms. On the surface, it looks glamorous, but behind the velvet curtains, deals were being made. Not just movie deals, but deals with people who had the kind of power that could control lives. And Meghan was there. She wasn't just a guest. She was participating, navigating, and sometimes even manipulating situations to her advantage. These connections weren't casual. Some sources claim that Meghan was seen with men who were known to have links to mafia operations, people whose names rarely appeared in the headlines, but who wielded influence behind the scenes. They could open doors. They could close careers. And they could make lives disappear with a single phone call. Meghan's proximity to these men, whether intentional or circumstantial, put her in a dangerous position, one she likely underestimated at the time. Why Meghan might have engaged with dangerous figures. But why would Meghan, a young actress, risk associating with men who might have criminal connections? Part of it is ambition. Hollywood is an industry where connections matter more than talent alone. A single influential figure can make or break a career. Meghan, ambitious and determined to succeed, may have seen these men as gateways, people who could open doors that Hollywood often keeps tightly shut. But there's more to it. Some insiders claim that Meghan didn't just rely on these men professionally. She became emotionally and personally entangled with them. She wasn't naive. She understood the stakes. She knew that every relationship, every connection, could serve a purpose, a career purpose, a personal purpose, or even a survival purpose. Yet this raises a disturbing question. Were these relationships mutually beneficial, or was Meghan being manipulated? The truth is, it's likely both. Meghan used her charm and intelligence to navigate these dangerous waters, but she also had to protect herself. The people she interacted with were not always trustworthy, and the stakes were high. One wrong move could have ended everything. The alleged ties to organized crime. There are whispers, unconfirmed but persistent, that Meghan had indirect ties to organized crime figures. This doesn't mean she was involved in criminal activity herself, but it does mean that she was in close proximity to people who were. These men had influence that extended far beyond Hollywood. They were connected to businesses, real estate, and shadow operations that most people will never know existed. For Meghan, this meant that every social interaction carried a risk. A single misstep could have jeopardized her career, her safety, and her future. Some insiders suggest that Meghan learned early on how to navigate these treacherous waters. She became skilled at managing perceptions, at presenting herself in a way that kept her safe while still advancing her ambitions. But proximity to these figures came at a cost. Meghan had to make choices, difficult choices, about who to trust, how to act, and how to conceal parts of her life from the public. Some of these choices were deeply personal, involving matters she would later go to extreme lengths to hide, including the abortions she had during this period. Imagine being a young woman in your late 20s, surrounded by powerful, dangerous men trying to make a name for yourself. You have ambition, talent, and intelligence, but every decision carries weight. Every relationship, every secret, every choice could affect your future in ways that most people will never understand. This was Meghan's reality. The secrecy required to navigate this world took an emotional toll. Meghan had to be constantly aware of who knew what, who could be trusted, and who might use information against her. The stress and fear that come with living in such an environment can shape a person in profound ways. For Meghan, it likely influenced her choices in relationships, career moves, and personal decisions, including the deeply private ones involving her reproductive choices. This is the side of Meghan Markle the public rarely sees. The confident, poised woman on the cover of magazines is a product of survival in a highly volatile world. The choices she made, some controversial and painful, were shaped by the men she met, the secrets she kept, and the dangerous circles she entered. The consequences of dangerous associations. Associating with powerful, dangerous men isn't just about risk, it's about consequence. For Meghan, these relationships may have had lasting effects, not just on her career, but on her personal life and her decisions regarding family and relationships. Being in close contact with people who wield significant influence can lead to situations where personal autonomy is compromised. Meghan may have been navigating not only professional stakes, but also personal pressures, including threats, manipulation, or coercion. Some sources suggest that Meghan's calculated secrecy during this period wasn't just strategic, it was protective. The abortions she had, the personal decisions she made, and the way she managed her public image were all potentially influenced by these high-stakes connections. This wasn't simply about ambition. It was about survival in a world where a single mistake could have catastrophic consequences. But here's the shocking twist. Meghan's connections to dangerous men weren't just a Hollywood story. They may have shaped the very woman who would later become a duchess. The lessons she learned, the choices she made, and the secrets she carried would follow her into the royal world, a world she believed would finally shield her from the dangers of her past. What happened when Meghan's past started catching up with her? When the very secrets she fought to conceal threatened to resurface? And what would Trevor Engelson reveal about the hidden web of danger that Meghan had navigated in her late 20s? The answers are coming next, and the revelations are more shocking than anyone could have imagined. What if everything you've seen of Meghan Markle, the poised duchess, the humanitarian, the symbol of empowerment, is just a carefully constructed image? What if behind the smiling faces and red carpet appearances lies a private truth filled with secrecy, fear, and calculated ambition that no one has ever known? Constructing the public image. By the time Meghan Markle married Prince Harry, she had spent years perfecting an image, a public persona designed to inspire admiration and trust. She had learned the rules of Hollywood, how to dress, how to speak, how to charm those in power. Every gesture, every appearance, every interview was part of a larger strategy. Meghan understood the power of perception. She knew that in a world where appearances mattered more than reality, projecting the right image could open doors, gain influence, and protect her from scrutiny. Her public image became almost iconic, the confident, polished woman of substance, the one who could advocate for women's rights and navigate global attention with elegance. To the world, Meghan appeared authentic, relatable, and admirable. But those closest to her, including Trevor Engelson and other insiders, knew that this version of Meghan was meticulously curated. The private truth, hidden choices, and secrets. Behind the image, Meghan's life was far more complicated. The reality of her early years, the dangerous associations, the personal decisions, the abortions, and the pressures of Hollywood, contrasted sharply with the persona she presented to the world. She had learned to compartmentalize her life, to separate public appearances from private struggles. Imagine the cognitive load of living such a double life, presenting warmth, empathy, and elegance to millions while secretly grappling with decisions that could destroy you if exposed. The emotional toll would be immense. Every move had to be calculated, every relationship carefully navigated, every mistake carefully concealed. Her private truth also included the fear of exposure. Meghan understood that the world judges women harshly, especially in Hollywood and later in the royal family. One revelation, one leaked secret could unravel everything. And so, she built barriers, emotional, psychological, and social, to protect herself from anyone who might discover the truth. Contradictions between public and private life. The contrast between Meghan's public image and private reality was stark. In public, she spoke about empowerment and compassion. Behind closed doors, she was navigating a world filled with danger, manipulation, and survival tactics. In public, she was the darling of the media. In private, she was calculating, cautious, and strategic. This contradiction raises a compelling question. Who is the real Meghan Markle? Is it the woman in the public eye, or the woman who endured the pressures, secrets, and dangers of her early life? The truth is likely somewhere in between. Meghan had to adapt, to survive, and to thrive, but not without making sacrifices and compromises along the way. Even small details of her life illustrate this duality. Publicly, she attended charity events with grace. Privately, she was aware of the manipulations and power dynamics behind the scenes. Publicly, she smiled and gave interviews. Privately, she weighed every word to prevent leaks about her past. Publicly, she appeared free. Privately, she was shackled by decisions she had made and secrets she had kept. The role of ambition and survival. Ambition played a crucial role in shaping both Meghan's public image and private life. Her rise in Hollywood wasn't accidental. She understood how to leverage charm, connections, and opportunities. But ambition alone doesn't explain the choices she made. The secrecy, the hidden abortions, and the alliances with dangerous men. Survival was equally important. Meghan had learned early that in a world of power, one mistake could be fatal, not just professionally, but personally. This mix of ambition and survival created a woman who was both strategic and guarded. She had to be careful whom she trusted, how she presented herself, and what information she revealed. It's a delicate balancing act, one that Meghan performed flawlessly, even if it came at an emotional cost. And yet, the world saw only the surface, the confident, charming, and compassionate woman. The preparation for royal life. Meghan's years in Hollywood, filled with secrets and calculated moves, prepared her in unexpected ways for royal life. The pressures of the monarchy, while different from Hollywood, required similar skills: image management, strategic decision-making, and the ability to navigate powerful, often manipulative individuals. Her private history, the abortions, the dangerous liaisons, the hidden struggles, made her more resilient, more adept at handling scrutiny, and more capable of presenting a flawless public image. But it also created tension. How do you maintain a public persona when your private life contains secrets that, if revealed, could destroy everything? The answer, Meghan discovered, was control. Control over the narrative, control over the media, and control over how the world perceived her. Every interview, every photo, every public appearance was carefully orchestrated to reinforce the image she wanted the world to see. A stark contrast to the private reality of her past. Emotional contradictions. Living this dual life inevitably led to emotional contradictions. Meghan had to present confidence while battling fear, charm while managing caution, and empathy while guarding herself against betrayal. The emotional strain of hiding the truth about her past, including the abortions and dangerous relationships, was immense. Imagine the anxiety of knowing that one revelation, whether from Trevor Engelson, a former associate, or the media, could unravel the carefully constructed image she had spent years building. Imagine the fear that someone could connect the dots between her past in Hollywood, her secret relationships, and the choices she had made. For Meghan, every day was a calculated performance, a balance between the public and the private. But here's the thing. No matter how perfectly Meghan controlled her public image, the secrets of her past weren't gone. They were waiting, like shadows behind the curtain, ready to resurface. And as Trevor Engelson and other insiders prepare to reveal the truth, the carefully constructed world Meghan has built is about to be shaken to its core. What happens when the private truth collides with the public image? How will Meghan respond when the world learns the reality of her hidden past, the abortions, the dangerous liaisons, and the choices she made to survive and thrive? The next chapter is where the revelations become even more explosive, and the stakes could not be higher. Why did Trevor Engelson stay silent all these years? He saw the woman Meghan Markle truly was. Not the polished duchess we all know, but the ambitious, secretive, and sometimes desperate woman navigating dangerous relationships. But why did he never speak out? What kept him from revealing the explosive truths about her past? The witness to Meghan's private world. Trevor Engelson didn't just know Meghan Markle casually. He lived with her, shared her day-to-day struggles, and witnessed the choices she made when no one else was watching. He was the first to see the tension between the public image Meghan presented and the private reality she lived in. He saw her ambition collide with her personal life. He saw the fear, the secrecy, and the calculated decisions that defined her late 20s. Trevor was married to Meghan during a critical period of her life, a time when she was transitioning from struggling actress to a rising star in Hollywood. During those years, he witnessed her interactions with powerful men, the high-stakes relationships, and the personal decisions that she never spoke about publicly. From Hollywood parties to private dinners, Trevor had front-row access to a world most of us will never know, a world where ambition, power, and survival intersected in ways that were sometimes dangerous. But why didn't he speak up? The answer is complicated. Trevor's silence wasn't just about protecting Meghan's image. It was about protecting himself. Speaking out could have repercussions for his career, his reputation, and even his personal safety. And yet, the secrets he held weren't just trivial gossip. They were truths that could completely alter the way the world sees Meghan Markle. The pressures of Hollywood and privacy. Hollywood is not a forgiving environment, especially for someone caught in the crosshairs of celebrity scandal. For Trevor, there was a constant risk that any revelation could spiral out of control. He knew the media would seize on any tidbit of information, twisting it to fit their narratives. A single story could dominate headlines, tarnishing reputations and destroying relationships. More than that, Trevor understood that Meghan's private choices, particularly the deeply personal ones like her abortions and her relationships with powerful men, were hers alone. Speaking out would mean exposing intimate parts of her life, and while he may have felt anger, betrayal, or frustration at the time, Trevor also understood the moral complexity of breaking that silence. He had to weigh his desire to tell the truth against the consequences of doing so. This silence wasn't passive, it was a choice. It was a strategic decision, informed by a combination of fear, loyalty, and self-preservation. For years, Trevor stayed quiet, watching Meghan rise, observing the world's fascination with her, and holding on to the secrets that could destroy everything. The emotional toll of staying silent. Keeping these truths hidden wasn't easy. Trevor had to live with the knowledge of Meghan's private world, the dangerous associations, the calculated decisions, and the personal sacrifices, while the public only saw the polished image. Imagine watching someone you knew intimately transform into a public figure whose fame and influence are based, in part, on the very choices you know to be hidden from view. The emotional weight of that knowledge was immense. Trevor had to reconcile his own feelings with the reality of Meghan's ambition. He had loved her, but he had also seen a side of her that the world never would. Every secret he kept added to the burden. Every lie she maintained in public made his silence heavier. And yet, he stayed quiet. He had reasons, practical, personal, and ethical, that guided his choice. The decision to speak out. So what changed? Why is Trevor Engelson finally speaking out now? The timing is crucial. Meghan's rise to global prominence has created a world where secrets can no longer stay buried indefinitely. The public's fascination with her life, combined with the ongoing scrutiny of her relationships and past decisions, has made silence increasingly untenable. Trevor's decision to reveal what he knows is not just about telling a story. It's about setting the record straight, about exposing the truths that were hidden behind Meghan's carefully constructed public persona. And it's about doing so before the narrative becomes entirely one-sided, leaving no room for facts, context, or nuance. What Trevor knows. Trevor Engelson possesses knowledge that is explosive. He knows about Meghan's relationships with men who had influence far beyond Hollywood. He knows about the abortions and personal decisions that she kept secret. He knows about the dangerous liaisons that could have derailed her life at any moment. And most importantly, he knows the truth about the woman behind the public image, a woman who is as ambitious as she is secretive, as strategic as she is emotionally complex. Trevor's revelations aren't just minor gossip. They provide context to the choices Meghan made, explaining not only why she acted the way she did, but also the pressures and dangers she faced. For years, Meghan's narrative has been controlled by media appearances, interviews, and public relations teams. Now, Trevor offers a perspective that the public has never heard, one that could challenge the very foundations of the story we've been told. The consequences of speaking out. By finally speaking out, Trevor risks everything. His career, his personal relationships, and even his safety could be affected. Yet, the truth he reveals is too important to remain hidden. The revelations provide insight into the hidden pressures, dangerous associations, and personal decisions that shaped Meghan's early life. They also force the public to reconsider the narrative that has been carefully crafted over the years. This decision to go public isn't just brave, it's transformative. It changes the conversation about Meghan Markle, challenging the perception of her as purely a victim, purely a princess, or purely a humanitarian. It paints a more complex, nuanced, and ultimately human portrait, one filled with contradictions, difficult choices, and calculated survival. But here's the shocking twist. Trevor's silence may have protected Meghan for years, but it also kept the world in the dark about something even bigger, a secret so explosive it could redefine her entire narrative. The world thinks they know Meghan Markle, but the truth, the raw, unfiltered truth, is about to come out. What is this secret Trevor has been holding on to? And how will Meghan react when the public finally learns what she's been hiding for decades? The next chapter will reveal the details that have been kept under wraps, details that will shock you, challenge your assumptions, and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about her. Meghan Markle isn't just a duchess who charmed the world. What if I told you that behind every smile, every public speech, and every glamorous appearance, there was a calculated game being played? A game involving power, manipulation, and connections so influential that few outsiders could even see it? The truth about Meghan's rise is far darker than anyone suspects. The art of influence. By the time Meghan reached her late 20s, she had learned a critical lesson. Survival in Hollywood wasn't just about talent. It was about connections, influence, and knowing which doors to open and which ones to close. Every handshake, every dinner party, every encounter with a powerful man was a potential stepping stone toward her goals. But not all stepping stones were safe. Some could collapse at any moment, dragging her career or even her personal safety. Down with them. Meghan's interactions with Hollywood's elite were more than social networking. They were strategic. She learned how to read people, how to leverage their weaknesses, and how to position herself as indispensable. To the outside world, she was the charming, relatable actress striving for success. But behind the scenes, she was calculating her moves with precision. The role of dangerous men. We've touched on Meghan's connections to powerful men, some with rumored criminal ties. But what makes these relationships fascinating and terrifying is how she navigated them. Meghan wasn't simply a passive participant. Sources suggest that she used these relationships to secure advantages while carefully protecting herself from potential harm. For example, in Hollywood circles, knowing the right person can mean the difference between landing a role or being blacklisted. Meghan allegedly understood this intuitively. She used her charisma, intelligence, and social acumen to maneuver herself into advantageous positions. Yet these moves came with risks. Many of the men she associated with had the ability to manipulate, control, and influence careers and personal lives. One wrong step could have ended everything. Calculated decisions. Meghan's choices in these circles weren't impulsive. There are claims that she deliberately cultivated relationships that could serve multiple purposes. Some men were useful for career advancement. Others provided social leverage or access to influential networks. And some were simply insurance, connections that could protect her if a situation turned dangerous. Think about the complexity of that strategy. It required awareness, intelligence, and an emotional detachment that few people could sustain. Meghan had to balance charm with caution, allure with vigilance, and loyalty with pragmatism. Every interaction was a calculated risk, and she had to constantly assess the stakes. The intersection of personal and professional life. For Meghan, the line between personal and professional was always blurred. Relationships weren't just about romance or friendship. They were about positioning herself for the future. Some sources suggest that Meghan used romantic relationships strategically, forming bonds with men whose influence could advance her goals or protect her from threats. This strategy wasn't without consequences. The emotional toll of maintaining multiple layers of secrecy, managing complicated relationships, and navigating potentially dangerous networks was enormous. Meghan's public persona masked the stress, fear, and moral complexity of these interactions. Few outsiders could have imagined the level of calculation required just to survive in these circles. The role of Trevor Engelson. Trevor Engelson, Meghan's first husband, was one of the few people who saw the inner workings of her life during this time. He witnessed the careful maneuvering, the private negotiations, and the strategic alliances that Meghan cultivated. But even Trevor didn't fully grasp the depths of her connections, particularly the ones with men whose influence extended beyond Hollywood and into far more dangerous territory. Trevor's perspective is critical because it highlights the duality of Meghan's existence. On one hand, she was charming, approachable, and seemingly innocent. On the other, she was calculating, strategic, and willing to use her relationships to secure power and protection. This duality is at the heart of Meghan Markle's story. Every move Meghan made came with a price. Maintaining these connections, keeping secrets, and managing her public image required constant vigilance. Emotional energy, time, and mental focus were drained by the need to stay one step ahead. And the stakes were high. A misstep could damage her reputation, end her career, or expose her private decisions to the public eye. Her ambition was clear, but it came at a cost. The calculated life she led in Hollywood created a foundation that would allow her to navigate the pressures of royalty, but it also left her emotionally guarded, deeply strategic, and highly aware of how fragile her public image could be. These hidden power plays didn't just impact Meghan's Hollywood career. They set the stage for future controversies. The skills she developed, manipulation, strategy, and calculated secrecy, would follow her into the royal family. But these same strategies also created tension, conflict, and ethical questions about the choices she made. Was Meghan's rise purely about talent, or was it about the strategic use of every relationship, opportunity, and secret at her disposal? This duality, the public image versus the private truth, is what makes Meghan Markle such a polarizing figure. People either admire her intelligence and ambition or question her morality and integrity. And this tension is what keeps the world fascinated with her story. There have been whispers in the darker corners of Hollywood about Meghan's ties to men with criminal connections. These were men who didn't just have influence in entertainment. They had influence in areas that were much more murky. These were the types of figures who had a reputation for doing whatever it took to get what they wanted. And Meghan? Well, she was climbing the ranks of Hollywood, navigating a world of power and corruption. But who was she really relying on to help her get there? Many of these powerful men had their fingers in multiple pies: real estate deals, shadowy business ventures, and other enterprises that operated just outside the law. While Meghan might have been doing her best to make it as an actress, she was also making deals with these figures, using their connections to get what she wanted. But why would Meghan, a woman with so much potential, get involved with these kinds of people? Was she naive? Or was it a calculated decision, one that would pay off in the long run? Whatever the reason, Meghan's associations with these men weren't just about career advancement. They were about power. They were about control. We know Meghan as a woman who has championed women's rights, advocated for social justice, and built a brand around empowering others. But what if I told you that the ambition she displayed wasn't always as pure as it seemed? Meghan had big dreams. She wanted more than just a few TV roles. She wanted the fame, the power, the status that came with being a celebrity. And as anyone who's tried to make it in Hollywood knows, sometimes you need more than just talent to get ahead. You need connections. You need people who can open doors for you, people who can help you climb to the top. But there's a price for everything, and Meghan's relationships with these powerful men came at a heavy cost. These men weren't just stepping stones in her career. They were the ones who could make or break her. And the cost of getting their help? Well, that's something Meghan has kept hidden for years. Behind the closed doors of Hollywood's elite, Meghan made deals that most people would never even dream of. Deals that would ensure her place in the spotlight, but would also entangle her with figures that were far more dangerous than the public could ever imagine. And what happened when these deals started to fall apart? What happens when the men she relied on turn against her? As Meghan's star began to rise, so did the complexity of her relationships. She wasn't just mingling with the ordinary players in Hollywood anymore. She was meeting men who had far more to offer than just movie roles or connections. These were men who had control, men who had secrets, and men who weren't afraid to use those secrets to get what they wanted. One of the most shocking revelations about Meghan's early relationships is the fact that she wasn't just linked to men in the entertainment industry. She was linked to men who had far more dangerous ties, ties that extended into the criminal underworld. There are rumors, unconfirmed but deeply disturbing, about her involvement with men who were known to have connections to organized crime. Imagine this: Meghan, a young woman trying to make it big, caught between the glitzy world of Hollywood and the darker, more dangerous world of people who knew how to manipulate, control, and use others to get what they wanted. This wasn't just about a few bad dates or a questionable past. This was about a life that Meghan was trying desperately to keep hidden, a life that didn't fit with the image she wanted the world to see. The truth is, Meghan had to make choices. She had to decide who she could trust and who she could use. And the people she surrounded herself with? They weren't always the kind of people who had her best interests at heart. They were the type of people who would do anything to control her, and they did. But here's the thing: Meghan wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. No, she was playing the game, too. And the choices she made weren't just about survival. They were about ambition, about getting ahead, about using the power of these dangerous men to climb the Hollywood ladder. What's even more shocking? The deeper Meghan got into this world, the more she started to use her connections with these figures to build the life she always wanted, a life that would eventually lead her into the arms of a prince. But was it all part of a carefully constructed plan? Was Meghan's rise to royalty just another step in her long game to get the power, fame, and control she so desperately craved?